My name is Jessie. I'm 29. I am a local co-business owner with my boyfriend. I have a son. I have 4 bonus children. We're very busy people. I'm also
Yeah.
a nursing student.
Oh, nice.
I was abused as a child. I was sexually abused. At the time, it was my father. It was I have no idea how long, to be honest. It started when I was really little. I don't remember much before kindergarten, honestly. So, like, I don't know, I'm kind of jealous of people that have memories beyond like 5 years old because I
Yeah.
have no idea what my life was like then. But after a while, you get older and you can fight back and stuff like that. It's kind of harder for them to hide things and get away with it. But like as a kid and it being your dad, it was kind of difficult to navigate as a kid, obviously, but also like him being my dad. I don't know how you hide that from society or like your wife or like, it's just kind of one of those things where, it's like my inner child for a long time in my early 20s was just screaming like, why didn't any of you know?
No.
You know? And like, I think the biggest thing that I've had to work through is like the regret of not coming forward. And that still kind of eats at me today. But, I went through what I went through and there's nothing I can do about it now. But he was kind of an interesting character. One of those people that like everybody, people didn't believe me.
So I'm sorry to interrupt
No,
you.
you're fine.
So you did end up telling somebody?
Eventually. So I was like, in 2009, I was 14. My house burned down. And that's a whole nother story. It was his fault. But my house burned down. Tensions were high. Trauma was lit, literally. But we were living in a camper on like the property where our house was for like 3 months. I'm not sure what the plans were for like rebuilding or like new house. I don't know. But I know it was like 3 months of living in this tiny camper, 1 bedroom. Like me and my mom shared the bed and he slept on the couch. And it was just awkward and I hated being there. It was too close for comfort. I ended up like, I'm a freshman in high school and I had a bunch of like older friends that, junior boys and stuff that I would hang out with at school and after school and stuff like that. And I ended up like going to do something with I think I was going to the ring ceremony at our high school. And so it wasn't anything like nefarious. I wasn't doing anything crazy. We were smoking cigarettes and like doing bad, teenage decisions. But I was not where I told my mom I would be.
Yeah.
And so that became a whole ordeal. She had her mom intuition and was just like, shows up at my best friend's house where I was supposed to be and was like blowing my phone up, trying to figure out where it was. And I come walking up because I had one of my guy friends drop me off down the street. I was like, I just know she's there. Like, don't drop me off in front of her house. And I was right. And she immediately was so mad at me. She could smell cigarettes on my shirt. She was just angry. And eventually, like, they went through my phone and, all that good parenting stuff.
Yeah.
And so, the fact that I was with boys, obviously, is a concern with a freshman daughter. And she was just so mad at me. She couldn't even look at me. But she was like, you're going to tell your dad what you did. And I was like, oh, great. Wonderful. And so I don't even remember what I said to him. I don't know. I told him what happened, I guess, or like mom's version of what she thought had happened. And he was just livid and just like starts making comments about the things that I was probably doing with these, which I never did.
Yeah.
And it was just so frustrating for me that, like, I had to completely walk out. Like, we were at my mom's hair salon. I grew up in beauty salons my whole childhood, so I have, like, 7 moms. And so I go outside. I'm, like, streaming tears down my face. I, like, punched a brick wall. My knuckles are bleeding. One of my other moms comes outside and is just like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
And I had never, up until this point, I had told like a few friends at school and stuff like that, but like told them not to tell anyone. And so I hid it very well up until my mom found out. But like, I had never told an adult before. I had never allowed a friend to tell an adult because at the time as a kid, like, and especially like I grew up in church. I was raised Pentecostal. He was the one that brought me to church, which is kind of screwed up in and of itself. But I had a lot of issues with the fact that like I had friends with divorced parents or friends with dead dads. And, you know, you see all these different family dynamics where you're just like, okay, well, I don't know anybody else that's going through this, but not having my dad might be worse. Let's not find out, you know? And then there's the religious aspect of like, honor thy father and mother above all else.
Yeah.
And like, that's the man that's bringing me to church. So it's very confusing as a kid. And I don't know. I felt like also if it weren't me, like what if he goes off and does these same things to someone else, you know? Like he's gonna find someone else if he leaves my mom, you know? What if I do this and he leaves and goes and does it to somebody else? Is that my fault? And I don't know. I had a lot of existential crises at a very young age because of that. But at this point, Dad's mad at me, Mom's mad at me, I'm mad, and I'm just outside freaking out. And I just kind of like word vomited. And it was mostly like the frustration of like, you're mad at me about these things that you're assuming I did with boys when I've never done that with boys, and you've done worse to me.
You were talking to your dad when you said that.
I was talking to my other mom, but kind of just like hypothetically, you know, how can you be mad about this when you've done worse?
Yeah.
And just like, I kept saying things like that, and she's just like, hold on, tell me what's going on. Like, what are you talking about? And I could barely talk. I don't even know what my explanation was at the time. I'm sure it was very dramatic and sobby, but like, she goes back inside, goes and gets another mom. And so I've got like 3 moms outside trying to talk to me and like calm me down. And they eventually helped me bring my mom outside and tell her what was going on. And my mom, I mean, bless her heart, she's obviously tensions are already high.
Yeah.
But like her immediate reaction is like, you're trying to get out of trouble, which is like, kind of screwed up, to be honest, but I can see where she's coming from, you know. Troublesome little kids. I mean, it happens. I'm sure it does. I mean, culture these days, you know.
Yeah. But something that serious, did you think that she would have taken your word for it?
Yeah. And she has. It took her a little while.
Wow. Because that's her husband, right?
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, my mom was molested as a child too. So it's like, I feel bad for her. And there's a lot of like, I know anger and resentment and, you know, not necessarily directed at her, but just kind of surrounding her that I've had to work through, really. But knowing what I know about her, and especially in retrospect now, of course, like, I mean, how would you have reacted? Like you said, it's your husband. It's the father of your child.
Kids,
Like, you wouldn't expect that. And like I said, a lot of people thought that way about him. Like, he would never do that. That's not the kind of person he is. And even his family didn't believe me, the ones who, are in the faith, like strictly Pentecostal faith. Like, nobody believed me. And just, it took her a couple of days kind of like, I could tell when she would start to like, she'd come in my room at random times and just be like, you know what, I remember, like, and just like these little simple instances that kept like coming to her mind. And she's like, oh, okay.
And those were the incidents that was happening when you were getting abused?
Yes. And just like throughout my childhood, like and especially like when we were living in the camper, it was, close quarters. It was really awkward, and teeny tiny little showers that are in those things and stuff, and just like the bedroom was separated from the living room by like this sliding door that didn't lock for whatever reason. And I remember one of the first things she realized was like, we all know you're taking a shower, you're getting ready to go to bed because you have school tomorrow, and he will literally just like open the door and bust up in there like very quickly and abruptly. And it's like, she kind of just realized all these little things, like him, coming into my room, or little, things like that, without going into too much detail. But like, it was just like all these little pieces she was putting together over the next few months, really. And it was hard for her at first because it was her husband. We were, planning to leave, and I heard some heated conversations over the phone, me eavesdropping. But for a while, she still like had us go and like have dinner with him, or like go watch movies with him or something, just to like, I don't know. It felt to me like phasing him out of our lives, but at the time it was more like pity.
Yeah.
Because it was like he denied everything. He didn't, understand why she would say those things, and like, I don't know, she felt bad, but like she knew.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, our house burned down in February of 2009. I turned 15 in May of 2009. And on my 15th birthday was the day that we moved into an apartment by ourselves. And it was probably the best birthday I can remember.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't have anything. I mean, most of what I had and my mom had after the fire was like hand-me-downs and things that were donated to me from my high school and like friends and family and stuff like that. So it was nice to have those things, but like having a place that was just ours, that like nobody knew where we were. He didn't know where we were. She made sure we had a garage so like he couldn't find her car or anything like that. And like, I just remember that night, like getting the keys, going to our new apartment, sleeping on the floor in my bedroom because all I had was a mattress. And she got me this little like tiny single serve chocolate cake and like a balloon from CVS that said it's a boy, because that's all they had.
That's all the balloon had.
It was hilarious and I loved it. It was great. It was the best birthday ever.
Yeah.
It was like the emancipation of Jessie. And I mean, after that, I thought like everything was going to go great. Life was going to be better. And in a sense it was. But there was also a lot that like after being removed from the situation, like there were pieces that I started putting together. And like, there are memories and flashbacks and nightmares and all of that stuff that's just like residual effects of, trauma in general, but also like having to reconcile the fact that I didn't stop it because, I mean, technically I could have, but I also did the best that I could with what I had.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no guidebook for how to be an abused child
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And I don't know, it wears on you, and there's nobody that can really tell you how to navigate it or how to heal from it. And the biggest thing that I think I've learned is that it's a very individual journey, and like everyone processes it so differently, like based on what happened, who it was, things like that. Your brain chemistry is literally different. Like the way that you process emotions and situations and solve problems is like everything is backwards.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fight or flight stuff that you have to deal with. It's just, and in the most formative years, like as a teenager, being 15, 16, 17 years old, like I pretended that I was okay.
Okay, yeah.
That was really the only way that I knew to get through it.
Yeah. So it stopped at 14?
Pretty
The
much.
abuse?
Yeah. I mean, I remember him like coming into the bedroom in the camper trying to like touch me while I'm sleeping. Like,
And this is after your trailer
yeah.
was on fire. So he still stayed with you guys?
Yeah, in the camper after the house burned down, we were sleeping in this camper that he had.
Yeah. And you said that it was his fault. What happened on the fire?
That was some more pieces that my mom put together later, but the day of the fire, I remember I was playing video games in my room. I spent a lot of time alone as a kid.
Yeah.
So I was in my bedroom playing something, eating Cheetos, whatever. My mom yells at me across the house to clean my bathroom, and I'm, rolling my eyes. Ugh, mom, whatever. I go get all the cleaning supplies from the kitchen and bring them back over to my bathroom. I remember taking my retainer out and putting it in like a cup of mouthwash or something on the counter, and I'm just cleaning my bathroom. And then all of a sudden I heard like this really loud pop. And it was like an oddly familiar sound, but also I had no idea what was going on. And all of a sudden I just hear like it's a trailer. So like you hear every footstep in the entire house. But I hear my mom like stomping down the hallway, coming to look down the hall. My bedroom's at the end of the hall. My brother's back from a deployment or something when that happened, but he wasn't home. Anyway, my brother's room was in the middle of the hall, and then like the living room is on the other end of the hall. She comes from the living room, runs down the hall, and then all of a sudden I hear her go, "Oh my God, a fire." And I was like, "Oh, whoa, what? Hold on." And I had no idea what to do. I'm not wearing a bra. I'm not wearing shoes. And my mom is just yelling at me to get out.
Get out, yeah.
So I run to my room real quick, grab my phone, and my niece, who was, I think, 2 at the time, was in the living room. And I grabbed my BlackBerry out of my bedroom and went and grabbed my niece, and I ran out of the house. I didn't have shoes on. We lived in the country. It was horrid. My dog ran outside and like started running around the neighbor's yard, and I'm getting stickers in my feet, and like I was like bleeding and trying to chase my dog down and calling 911 at the same time and talking to the cops, and they're telling me to calm down, and I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
My house is on fire.
Yeah.
I need my dog. I have a baby. I'm only 14. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it was surreal, and it was all kind of a blur. But later, my mom started like telling me these things that she was remembering, and one of them was like, hey, a week before that, or, not too long before the fire actually happened, she said he had come into the house wearing coveralls, middle of like the summer, not cold at all, just coveralls, smelling like gasoline. And he came in the house, and she was like, "What are you doing? Like, where where are you wearing that to? Like, how do you smell like gas? I have so many questions. And like, she said that the day of the fire, not long before that actually happened, the same thing happened. And he came in with coveralls. He smelled like gas. And like, we lived in the country, so like we burned all of our, things
trash,
that you would recycle, we burned. So we had like our backyard up a hill, that was our burn pile where we would normally do all of that, like away from the house, away from the trees, and like a little clearing where it was safe to do that. Well, lately at that time, he had been kind of like moving it closer and closer to the house and had ended up like burning stuff that day right behind the house, like behind my brother's bedroom window. And she complained. I remember her complaining about it all the time and telling him, stop doing that. Like, you're going to catch the house on fire. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And it just, like, I don't know, she just assumed that he didn't care, I guess. I think that it was actually, like, ruled an electrical fire by the fire department. But, I mean, there was a fire in the backyard,
right
and then the grass, and then my brother's window.
Yeah.
And it kind of sucked because he had just, like I said, gotten back from deployment. All of his like stuff was in that closet. And like I went back into the house after, the next day, and there was no floor, there was no seal. Like, that entire room was gone.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, I was a pyro as a kid, so like it was fun to watch. I'm not going to lie. But I mean, it was just kind of cool.
Yeah.
To see something so, like, powerful and, like, I don't know, at that point in my life, like, I think it was a lesson that I needed to learn as a kid, just to let go of all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because
Stuff
honestly,
don't matter.
no.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I was spoiled, like, to the point where, they love bomb and they give you gifts and they bribe and manipulate, and I was a spoiled kid. Like, I have siblings, but I was essentially an only child because my brothers they lived with my grandma for most of my childhood. So, like, I was by myself a lot of the time. I was very fortunate, and they bought me lots of toys, lots of clothes. My mom is, like, creative beyond imagination, and like I had an amazing painted bedroom and like all the coolest things in my room, and I loved it. It was like my sanctuary. It didn't feel safe at the time, but I at least had a fortunate upbringing as well. That's kind of messed up to say, but other than the abuse, I was a very fortunate kid, and I think I put a lot of value on a lot of that stuff because I was so isolated. I spent most of my time in my room playing video games, playing guitar, playing music, like writing, singing, whatever I could do to like try to make myself happy. And losing all of that kind of just like, I don't know, it taught me to value things that you're not necessarily given.
Yeah.
I kind of had a little bit of a meltdown after it happened just because, like, I didn't want my life to be put on hold. And, like, the next day I wanted to go to school and they wouldn't let me. And, like, which was stupid because we had to go to a laundromat and, like, wash all of our clothes and my backpack and all this stuff, like, 9 times.
Yeah.
Just to get the smell out. And I still would, like, go to school and, like, open a binder and get a waft of, like,
the
smoke. Like, smoke, it was disgusting. And, I mean, but I just didn't want to stop long enough to care. And I guess that's kind of just, like, how I'd always lived, like, flying by the seat of my pants. Just, let's go to school. Come on. And, I mean, I was a cheerleader. I did pageants. I've always been like this go, 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 busy kind of lifestyle, which I carried into adulthood and ended up like working 3 jobs and only being home to eat and sleep. And I don't know, just distracting
Yeah.
myself,
Just to get your mind off of things.
which is a horrible habit that
Yeah.
I've had to try to break myself of. But I don't know. It was a lot. But I think losing all of that and like, I wish that at the time I could have like taken that as an opportunity to heal then. But I proceeded to be a giant turd in high school and just like get myself into trouble and, experiment with partying and boys and, just getting into things that I didn't need to because the people that I was around seemed to care about me. Which, I mean, I've had a million toxic relationships since we left him just because, your attachment styles and like your view of love is so broken when someone does that to you, especially like he used to try to talk me into things all the time and like say, this is what you do when you love someone. And like, if you loved me, you would do this. If you loved me, you would do that. And it was just like being a 15-year-old girl and like having that voice in the back of your head saying like, hey, sex is how you get what you want, like.
Or how you make them stay or how you make them happy.
Exactly.
But that's not it.
And I mean, like, it was just this constant like need for love. And I wasn't finding it, obviously, because I'm searching for it in all the wrong places. And just like, I was a little deviant when I was in high school. And I mean, I was very angry too. I mean, I had there was a lot of drinking and, dabbling in things that I had no business doing. And that kind of carried into my young adult life later on, which I have had to free myself from a little bit. I didn't have any addiction problems by any means, but just constantly trying to not numb the pain, but like take myself out of the equation. Like just, disassociating, I guess.
Yeah.
By chemical means. I mean, I don't know. It was a wild ride. We did go to his apartment and like have dinner or watch a movie together or whatever. And it was so uncomfortable and I hated every second of it, but I did it, I mean, there was still that part of me that was like, this is your dad, like suck it up.
Yeah.
He's not going away, but he did go away, and mom eventually like didn't want anything to do with him. She kind of hates him now, honestly. Yeah. It's scary. But I did eventually get the authorities involved, but it was after I got some crazy news, which was also probably something that I really had to work through as a teenager. But I remember being at school one day and my mom texted me and was like, I have to talk to you about something after school. And that's the worst thing that you can... We have to talk.
Yeah. Just tell me now.
Please.
Why
I was
we gotta
so
wait?
mad. I was like, Mom, what is wrong? And then, like, she picks me up from school because I was a car line kid. And I'm like, okay, what's up? Like, tell me now. I'm going to freak out. Wouldn't tell me. And, like, I had noticed that, prior to this, she had started, like, hiding that she was smoking cigarettes again, like on our patio at our apartment, and like seemed very like restless and antsy. So I had no idea what was going on. I don't know what I assumed at the time, but I did not expect what she told me. So we get to her hair salon and she's still kind of restless. She's pacing a little, like just seems nervous. And I was so confused. I was just like, what is wrong with you? And she brings me outside, lights a cigarette, which again is like a new thing. She quit smoking for years. And I was just like, okay, out with it. Let's go. Like, she looks at me and she says, what would you say if I told you that he wasn't your dad? And I just like started like tears just streaming down my face. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, she didn't know what to do with me because like she didn't know why I was crying exactly. Yeah. And she's thinking like that I'm upset that he's not my dad, but like,
yeah, how did you feel?
I mean, it's kind of upsetting because, like, once it set in, I had to kind of reconcile these feelings of, like, betrayal and, like, being lied to. But, like, I just felt relieved.
Yeah, in some way.
Yeah. Because, like, I no longer had this idea that, like, I share DNA with this monster.
Yeah.
Which is what he was. And I just remember being so like conflicted and like, I mean, I was a crier. I've always been a crier. I'm still a crier, but like, I just didn't know what to do but cry. And she was just like, I'm sorry, no. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like, I don't want him to be my dad. Like, that's horrible. But she told me that like she had recently written a letter to my biological dad and he finally answered and he had agreed to meet me and all this stuff. And so that was what she was kind of organizing and getting antsy about. And so when she finally told me, it was a little overwhelming, but I was excited because now all of a sudden, like, I have a dad that didn't abuse me, you know, like, it felt like a new beginning, kind of. And then she told me,
were you?
I was 15 still. Yeah, I think it was after the next school year had started. So probably a few months into that. And she told me about him. I was excited. I was kind of nervous. She told me that he had daughters, so all of a sudden I had 3 sisters.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. And, you know, getting to know them and getting to know my dad and stepmom and stuff like that, it helped me kind of get through some of that just because I had something else like positive to look forward to, and it felt like I had another family all of a sudden, which I did.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a turning point, but also we're not all that close. Like we don't really talk now, but like I still keep up with my sisters. I had a little sister all of a sudden, and I was like, dang it, I would have been a bomb big sister. Like, so that was kind of sad, but she was like 12 or 13, I think, when we met. So like, I still kind of got to experience that a little bit, but I'd been like treated like this only child for so long that like this big family was so exciting to me. And I always thought that I wanted a big family. I ended up with a rather large clan now. So, I mean, it was just, I felt welcome and like home.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know, even though it wasn't like a conventional home or anything like that. But like, I don't know, it felt like, okay, I'm not part of this like dirty, shameful, you know, circle of people. Because he wasn't the only one in his family that has been accused of those things. And I wasn't the only victim either. And so eventually, you know, at first I was just like, I don't want to see him again. I would be okay if I never saw this person ever again in my entire life. But eventually I guess the rage caught up with me. And I was kind of just like, you know what, screw that guy. Like,
yeah,
he deserves whatever's coming to him. And so I don't even know how it really happened, but the best way that I found to alert the authorities of this was I was in AP English my junior year, I think, and we had to write like a personal essay of some sort. And it was like she gave examples of like, an event in your life and then another event that, resulted from that, and then like a turning point event, like, phases of life kind of thing. And so immediately, like, my head goes to my life and like what's happened. And I ended up writing it was a really beautiful essay. I actually still have it in a closet somewhere. But I wrote about dad, stepdad, whatever, Satan, the fire, and then like meeting my new dad. So it was kind of like this phoenix rising from the ashes kind of story. And like before I wrote it, I actually asked, like in front of the class and everything, I didn't care. I asked her, like, was there, I don't even know how I phrased it. I basically asked her if anything was like off limits. Like, would it be okay if like these elements were in this writing? And she's like, well, depending on the severity, of course, like I am legally obligated to report certain things, So I was like, okay, let's do this. I don't care. And I still have the essay. I still have the sticky note she put on it with her phone number afterwards, because she read it and she was like, this was really beautiful, but also like, are you okay? Like, call me if you ever need anything. And so it was like kind of me setting myself free from it a little bit, but like I knew that like some stuff was about to go down because I did that. I knew that I was kind of opening a can of worms, to say the least, but definitely got reported. So had to talk to like school administration and things like that. They, of course, like alert the gingerbread house or whatever. Like I think it was the Cara house or something that I ended up having to go to, but had to get evaluated and like did some counseling for a little while that I was not very good at, but I did all that. I spoke to the police after, like, all that stuff was reported, of course, but like I don't know if it went through like a CPS kind of thing. I'm not really sure what the whole process was, but I remember I worked at Splash Kingdom in the summer after my sophomore year or junior year, something like that. And the sheriff that was over my case, like, picked me and my best friend up from me and my mom's apartment, and like she was gonna interview me and then like go drop me off at work because like my mom was at work. I don't know why they agreed to do this, but it was kind of cool. She bought me candy bars. It was great.
Yeah.
So she picks me up from our apartment and I go to the Caddo Sheriff's office, and we sat down, and like I have this camera in my face. This stranger I've never met is like staring at me in this weird chair, and we're in this tiny little room, and it was horrible. It was so awkward. But like for the first time, I actually had to sit there and like recount details and like timelines and, specific incidents and situations and stuff like that. And just, it was a lot. I don't even know how long I was there, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And my poor friend, she ended up going in there too, because they were like, do you want to say anything? She's like, I've only known her for a couple years, but sure, yeah. I mean, I love her to death. I just went to her baby shower the other day, actually.
Oh, nice.
But she sat in there and gave some sort of testimony as well. Basically, after that, essentially, the statute of limitations in Louisiana is essentially what gets in the way of that. I believe that they told my mom that they did make contact with him. I don't know if like they went to his house or if they called him. I don't really know, but apparently they did speak with him. I don't know what was discussed. I don't know what they asked him or if they like brought him in or anything like that, but essentially with no physical evidence and how long it had been, there was nothing they could do. So my mom and I, like I said, I know I'm not the only one, and my mom and I had talked to actually his previous stepdaughter, who I really wanted my mom to just like betray all trust and like bring screenshots of like messages and stuff like that. Just so like with other people involved, there would be more weight, behind the case and they would do something.
Yeah.
But she just didn't want to put herself through that. I mean, understandably so, especially with as removed as she was. My whole life happened after she got away from him. So, like, it's a long time.
Yeah.
But she was very closed off, did not want to talk about it, just wanted nothing to do with it. And I remember not long after that was about when we found out he was seeing someone else. And I think I was pregnant by then, so I was probably a senior, and he ended up calling my mom randomly, and like she saw the phone number immediately and knew who it was, but like he called her and said that like his wife and he had found my like class ring from like middle school. It was like my eighth grade ring, I guess. I don't remember, but like I hadn't seen it since before the fire, so I wasn't missing it. I didn't care. But he said that his wife made him call and see if like that was something that we wanted to come pick up or something like that. And my mom probably shouted expletives at him and hung up the phone, honestly. But like that was the only time he's ever like tried to make contact with me.
With you again, yeah.
Yeah, or her for that matter. Like, and I was just like you.
A ring?
You think that I want that? Like we don't want to see you.
Yeah.
For anything, especially not that. But at that point was when like my mom had confirmed that like he was seeing someone else, and he did end up marrying her, and she did have a daughter. And that was, one of my biggest fears.
Yeah.
That was like part of the driving force behind me keeping my mouth shut for so long, was like I didn't want it to happen to anybody else. And now it was like all of a sudden, because of me, because this man is walking around doing whatever, like now he has access to another little girl.
Yeah.
And my mom is crazy. Like, you don't want to be on her bad side, but she ended up like contacting the little girl's dad and like just telling him all the stuff. And so he ended up, I think.
So that wasn't his daughter?
No. Which he does have a biological daughter, and he's never done anything like that to her.
Yeah.
So it's just the ones that don't technically belong to him.
Yeah.
Which I'm the only one that like has his last name and, lives on my birth certificate.
How did you overcome that?
I didn't. I mean, I think I'm at a point now where I'm like pretty well balanced emotionally speaking. And that really has only come in the last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm almost 30 and like I finally feel like a person.
Yeah.
This thing that happened to me was my identity for so long. And it probably was more like avoiding it or hiding it. Like pretending not to be this traumatized, abused child was my identity, honestly. And I kind of became like a chameleon in all of my, life situations just because I didn't know how to act.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was normal. And so, like, school was kind of like my safe haven because I was legit safe there. And so friends and like cheerleading and stuff like that was my only escape aside from like being at home and hiding in my bedroom. So like learning how to figure out who I was instead of just like going out and like mimicking other people and how they act and how I think I should act kind of, gave me an identity crisis really early in life because everything felt so fantasized, basically. Like I was just whoever I wanted to be that day. And I was really angry all the time. I was not very nice to some people. I know I wasn't. And even in a lot of the toxic relationships that I've had as an adult, even after having my son, like I'm certainly not blameless in a lot of those situations, but I know now like why I acted the way that I did and why I felt the way that I did and thought the way that I did. And for a long time, I really I thought there was something wrong with me. And I was convinced that it wasn't PTSD. Like I wasn't having flashbacks. Like I convinced myself that I was fine and I could openly talk about this with anybody. A hobo on the street, I could sit there and talk about my abuse with. Like I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
For a really long time, and I was sorely mistaken. So I had this idea in my head that like it's not PTSD, it's not trauma, like something else is wrong with me. I'm so angry all the time. I can't control my moods. I'm legit crazy. And I actually was hospitalized last year, the year before, something like that, recently. Mm-hmm. And that was where I was diagnosed bipolar, which at the time I was like, okay, it all makes sense now. Like, yep, we're going to accept that. Cool.
For those that doesn't know what bipolar is, can you explain to us?
So I always kind of had like a sneaking suspicion that I could be bipolar. And it's mostly... a lot of people think like, bipolar people are very hot and cold. They're like, hard to get along with, flip of a switch kind of mood swings. And there is this idea that like bipolar people are depressed for a long time and then they're manic for a long time or whatever. But there's a few different spectrums of bipolar disorder. Like there's 2 different types. There is also like rapid cycling bipolar where like there's no rhyme or reason. You kind of just like go through manic and depressive phases, without any kind of cyclical, some people have like seasonal depression and things like that kind of, there are triggers that cause these shifts in personality, essentially. But like at the time, it made sense to me because mania is like this phase where people typically like act very recklessly and impulsively and like feel elated and like on top of the world, like they can do anything. And there was this period of time in 2019 after I left nursing school, the first time I was there. And that was kind of like shortly after I felt like what was kind of the manifestation of like these symptoms that made me start, leaning towards bipolar disorder. But like I was just very angry. I was moody. I couldn't control my emotions. Very quick to react, short fuse. But then in 2019, after I left school, I got extremely depressed. And, grades were slipping, and I decided it was just best if I leave before, I tank my grades and I can't go back. So I left, and then there was like this months-long downward spiral where I literally stopped paying my bills for a few months. I, was, going out and drinking and partying a lot and just not taking care of myself or my responsibilities. I wasn't sleeping at home where I lived. I was staying with a friend. I would not check in with my son enough. And so my mom decided that she was going to keep him for a while, which sparked a whole nother rage inside of me that was just, I was kind of just living recklessly, to say the least.
Yeah.
And I got to that point again where I didn't care about myself. And it got really dark, honestly, but after the high, it was kind of I felt 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and was just doing whatever the heck I wanted.
Yeah.
And looking back at that now, it was so selfish and stupid, but
Yeah. What was the moment when you're like, okay, I need to stop this and start really focusing on yourself, your son, your life?
So I got really close to this person who was the first person in my life that I really felt understood by. And within a week of meeting him, I actually saved him from suicide, which is crazy. Red flag number one, honestly, but which I was sounded insensitive, but regardless, I knew him very well so quickly that I knew that he was doing that or attempting to.
Yeah.
And so I played a role in, stopping that from happening. So that kind of trauma bond brought us closer together in a sense. And we ended up I spent every day with this guy and my best friend too, and he would come and stay with us at her apartment and party with us and stuff like that. But eventually he ended up going to jail with a large amount of charges for child pornography and things like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Which he was also abused by a father figure as a child. So I had this kindred spirit that really truly understood emotionally deep down how I had felt my entire life. And I became a statistic as a teen mom, sexual deviant, but he seemed to be becoming the statistic that perpetuates the cycle. And I'm not saying that he would do that. I don't know. He is still in jail, as far as I know. But it was kind of re-triggering for me because it was just kind of a shock that that person who I felt so emotionally close to and understood and heard by was
Doing that.
another monster, and just it was hard to deal with that because he had become this person that I spent so much time with, and then that just kind of it was a crash and burn. I was distraught and I didn't eat for a few days. I was having trouble sleeping. I had friends that were like, come stay in my house. Like, I'm going to feed and clothe you and make sure you shower. Like it was one of those deals where I just completely fell apart. I didn't know what to do. And so my mom actually saw his mugshot on the news, I think, and was like, hey, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand life. I don't understand anything. And like, why is this happening to me? And so I eventually was just like, can I just come home? Like, and I think I just like packed all of my stuff into my car and brought it to my mom's house. But like, it was it felt like a step backward, which honestly, I'd already done that myself by acting the way that I had for the few months prior. But it really was like a humbling experience to realize like, hey, you're really screwing your life up right now. Like, you need to refocus. And I had a lot of, I definitely latched onto my son pretty hard after that and kind of had to, rethink how I was, treating and parenting him, and really kind of start figuring out my stuff,
Yeah.
Like I realized that there was stuff that I hadn't healed from, and I thought that I was okay for so long that it was just kind of like, wow, I am weak. And it sucks to feel like that, but like, I mean, what do? Went through a thing. I had to deal with it. That's, the same for any situation in life, but.
And now you're healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be where I am in this journey now if it weren't for my boyfriend. He is probably the only person that has, male companion wise, he's probably the only person who's actually sat and talked to me at length and in detail about, what I've been through, how it felt and how it feels now. And like, there were a lot of things that I learned about myself and how I handle things, and those kind of taught me that I've had this like victim mindset for so long that like all of those toxic relationships I went through and blamed those people for all of the problems that we had, like I was not the best partner either.
Yeah.
So like, I've had to kind of reconcile with myself a lot of things that I didn't realize that I was doing. And just like focus on why I was doing those things and why I react to things the way that I do, and so intensely. Like, I'm a very, very emotional person, and like at the flip of a switch, I can turn on you. And it's just because it's like a defense mechanism, I guess, like, I don't know, I snap a lot. And I've had to really, really work on that, especially with like the kids and things like that. Because just like me trying to be in control of my life and every aspect that I can has made it to where it's hard to be around me when I feel like I'm not in control. So like snapping at the kids for like not picking up their mess, or, somebody making noise somewhere unnecessarily. Like, I've just gotten to the point where I've had to teach myself not to freak out and get overstimulated and like upset and irritable. And I remember there was a point where I was sitting on the bed with my boyfriend and he was just like, why are you so angry? Who are you mad at?
Yeah. Why are you mad?
I know. And I'm like, I don't. I've been trying to figure this out for
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Why
It's
do you
like-
think I'm mad? Please
Yeah.
tell me.
It's like once you find out, let me know so I
Exactly.
can fix me.
And like he sat there and he looked at me and he was like, I feel like you have some like really unresolved emotions of, involving your mom and like the fact that this happened to you.
Yeah.
And like nobody came to your rescue, like that wasn't really like, of course that thought is in your mind, but like it didn't seem like a reigning idea in my head to where like it was a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I hate that because like I understand my mom's point of view. Like she was married to this man. It was for 15 years he was her partner. And I get, how you can be blinded by certain things, especially when I was hiding stuff. So, I mean, there's no way around it.
Imagine the things that you went through, and I'm so sorry that happened to you. But I just want to say thank you for coming. Go ahead.
I'm not. I am who I am now because of it. And I thank God every day that like, at least I now have learned something from it. And I'm going to be a better mom and a better partner and a better friend and nurse too. Like, I'm going to be so much better because of what I've learned from this, even though it took me 30 years. Yeah. I mean, there's no timeline, there's no guidebook, there's no
age is just
instructions.
At least you recognize it and you're trying to do better.
Exactly.
Which is
some
amazing.
people never heal.
Yeah, exactly. And they stay the same.
Right.
But with you, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Again, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Do you feel better?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like another therapy session.
It really is.
A free one.
Getting it out is like...
It's good, right? It's
so therapeutic, even if you don't like intend for it to be like just talking about.
Yeah.